Hello and welcome back to the Web Canopy Studio Show. I'm your host, Tom Andrews, and we are once again joined by the fantastic Elizabeth Winkleman. This time, we are going deep into the weeds inside of HubSpot, talking about using feedback surveys to improve customer satisfaction. Gear up and let's begin. Elizabeth, welcome back. Always great to see your smiley face here. Yep. So we're going to be delving deep again inside of HubSpot today and using a tool that I imagine a lot of listeners won't be using and certainly won't be using as effectively as they could, because a lot of people, they get HubSpot and perhaps they're only using 10 to 20% of the tools.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're using more than that, but they're just sort of like dabbling in each tool and not really using it properly. Whereas there are so many cool little known tools that really can improve your entire operations, and feedback surveys is absolutely one of those. Now, you've got quite a lot of experience being in the weeds with different clients, like helping them implement these feedback surveys. So before we do a screen share, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to get all the goodies. If you listen to this, then we'll talk you through what we're doing as we go through. But before we do that, Elizabeth, do you want to just give an overview of the importance of a feedback survey and where people go wrong with it?
Yeah. So first of all, a lot of people, the Service Hub peeps, they don't even really know that they have access to a survey tool in HubSpot. It's kind of remarkable, actually. It's one of those little nuggets that when I'm doing HubSpot onboarding and it's a service team, they're like, wait, what? You can do what?
And I'm like, when they think you're a wizard.
I am. I think I am. I never got my Hogwarts letter. I'm going to take it up, with the Ministry of Magic at some point. But anyway.
Exactly. Well, I'm off to Orlando in a few weeks, so I can do that for you.
You could do that. Because you're going to be right there. That would be great.
Yeah, into Diagon Alley. Yeah.
Anyway, feedback surveys. It's like, first of all, they didn't know it existed, right? So you show them, and then what happens is it's like, well, what do I do? You know what I mean? Because surveys, first of all, they've got like a bad connotation, right? And there's good surveys and bad surveys, just like there's good wizards and bad wizards. There's a method to how to survey, right? And we've all filled out a survey where it's like, all right, you're obviously looking for a specific, answer, and you've skewed everything that way. But we don't want to do that, right? But what I like about the HubSpot survey tool,
just quickly there on that, Elizabeth, do you find a lot of companies skew that survey? Do you find a lot of clients do that because maybe their ego's getting in the way? Because let's face it, all of us can benefit from feedback like that, but not all of us want to hear it. We don't want to send a survey having one idea of what people are going to say and then find out that they really hate the thing that we've delivered. Yeah. Is that something you encounter regularly? And then does it maybe help our clients working with you as part of our agency, where you tell them, okay, we're going to do this because of these reasons, and it almost takes a bit of pressure off themselves because it's coming from an external source? Is that something you find?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously all of us always want to do a good job, right? We always want the good stuff, and the good stuff is easy to hear, but honestly, you don't grow unless you deal with the challenges, right? And if you're defensive about it, I've been told over and over, and it's true, defensive people don't grow, right? And feedback surveys are one way to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, right? I don't think any company in the world wants a bad or a really ugly review, right? They want everybody to be promoters. They want everybody to be happy with their service, their product, whatever it is that they're doing and providing. They want customer satisfaction. Well, the only way to know if you're actually getting that is to send a survey. And yes, the tendency is you will get the people that are really happy and the ones that are really not happy. But at least then you can take the negative, the bad things, and turn it into an opportunity. Because really, if you look at the negative as a learning experience and you look at it through the lens of this is an opportunity for us to grow, right? Instead of like, oh my gosh, we suck. You know what I mean? If you spin it and you're like, okay, what can I learn from this experience? Then I think that they're actually really powerful,
And talking of using feedback to better you, I've been going inside looking at some of our templates within the HubSpot marketplace. And when I was going through a couple of themes, and I was looking at the reviews from, I think 2022 it was, when it first came out, these themes, and the reviews, like some of them were like, this is buggy. But then like straight away, like the next reviews were like, oh, this started out buggy, but Blake, who's our like genius developer, was so good,
Right.
he fixed it straight away. And if we didn't listen to those views, if we turned a blind eye to it, or just completely ignored it, then those templates would have had bugs in forever. Part because we took on that feedback and thought, okay, this is what we have to now go and improve upon. Blake did that instantly, and that is the perfect example of using feedback to become really damn good. And now these templates are exceptional. So with that,
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you kind of sparked something in me, like with that bad review, right? In your example, Blake first immediately took action, and then two, more importantly, responded after that action was taken. You know what I mean? Like, so sorry, we value your feedback. We fixed this issue. Let us know if you've experienced something else. You know what I mean? Or whatever. That's a terrible way to write a feedback response. However, but what that just did is built trust. And it not just built trust with that person who was unhappy and reported that it was buggy. It's also building trust with people you have yet to encounter, right? Everybody knows the power of Amazon reviews, right? Or just reviews in general, but Amazon is obviously the behemoth, and the biggest one. Before you make a product purchase, you're looking at how many stars it has. And then out of how many stars, how many reviews does it have? Because obviously if it's got 5-star reviews and there's only 4 of them, you're like, okay, they either paid it or this thing is pretty cool, just not a lot of people know about it. But then if you see tens of thousands of reviews and it's still 4 stars, you're like, well, that's still a pretty solid product. So like the reviews are relative, but the power is still there, right? And now everybody's trained to go look at those. And even if you have the negative review, most people, like in the App Store, for example, when you get an app for your iPhone, that's a great example. You're going to go read the reviews before you download it and see what the issues were. Sometimes it's compatibility, right? There's nothing you could do about it. But sometimes it's like a legit bug. And in the example you gave, where the bug was fixed, the problem was acknowledged. I think that's the best thing is, there was an issue. We fixed it. Here you go. Like that's incredibly valuable, in my opinion.
And just doing that publicly as well, like you saying, is so important, because it's usually a little story. There's a Xbox game. I'm not really a big gamer, but I really like medieval history and role-playing games. And there's a game called Kingdom Come Deliverance that came out a few years ago. And it was by at the time, quite a small company who made this game. And it was very historically accurate. But when it came out, there were a lot of bugs. And they were quite open about it. Then, I don't know how long it was. It wasn't that long before they fixed them. And then I got the game, and it was amazing. And I probably wouldn't have got that game if they didn't take on board that feedback and then go and change it and just iron out those bugs. And they've really benefited that massively, because they're now bringing out a second game, a sequel to that, and it's going to be, I think their budget is so much bigger. So they must have made so much money from that initial game, and the fact that they overturned the criticisms people had of it just shows how powerful it is to listen to feedback and then responding and then doing something about it. So with that in mind, now everybody knows the power of feedback surveys, and just to put your ego aside for 2 minutes to get that feedback, Elizabeth, do you want to show us how to use HubSpot to come up with some really great feedback surveys, and in a way that is really simple to do, where you don't need any other platforms and tools?
Yeah, I can. Tom, can you see my screen?
I can indeed.
Okay, perfect. So inside of HubSpot, I'm using our test portal today. So there's going to be a lot of wonky data, but you'll still get the lay of the land, right? You'll go to surveys. And this tool, by the way, is, I believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm sure we'll get comments. I'm pretty sure surveys is a Service Hub tool. So if you don't have Service Hub, you won't be able to use the survey tool. Just want to make that clear. But you can see in this test portal, we have one published, there's drafts, You can see ratings, things like that, how many surveyed, how many responses you got. So you don't even have to like drill into anything necessarily until you see responses and things like that, right? You can get notifications and stuff too. We'll go over that in a minute. But what I love about HubSpot is half the time it's when I'm working with clients, and this goes for anything. So it's kind of survey tool agnostic. It's yes, they want to use this new thing, right? This new to them process, but they literally don't know where to start. What do I do? And so I always coach them. I'm like, you know what? HubSpot actually has a lot of default things available for you out of the box, ready to go. You literally just turn it on. And in some instances, it's actually that easy. And then you can use it as is. So if it's new to you, like feedback surveys in this example, start with something small, right? Don't go full on custom. You don't need custom is not the way. So if Mando was here from The Mandalorian, he would say that's not the way, at least not yet. That would be his line with Grogu, right?
What a show that is. What a show.
Right? We could do a lot of things with Star Wars and HubSpot. But anyway, yeah, in here, yes, you can do a custom survey. That's totally fine. But if you've never done it before and you want to survey your customer base, HubSpot is a huge promoter of, customer satisfaction and gathering client feedback. So they actually have 3 standard survey types ready for you to go inside of HubSpot. So the first one that measures customer loyalty is NPS or Net Promoter Score. So this is where you want to send it to maybe your main point of contact or something like that to gauge whether or not they're a promoter or detractor of your brand, right? That'll give you a good indicator of their loyalty and the, what's the word I'm looking for? The likelihood that they'll stick around, right? Customer satisfaction is how are they satisfied? Are they satisfied with your customer experience? Something you want to know more about. And then this customer effort score is how easy it is for your customers to find the help when they need it. So that's the difference between the 3. And obviously you don't want to mix them up, right? Like if you're wanting to gauge satisfaction, you're not going to send out an NPS score, right? Because this is just, they're just going to give you a score and say yes or no. And then you're going to go on your merry way. But you can see in here, there's a how it works. You can preview the template to make sure it's what you want. I'm just going to pick the customer satisfaction survey for now today, because that's kind of what we were talking about, client retention and things like that. And this is a great way to get that information. So click the customer satisfaction survey template. You can choose the delivery method. So before you start the survey, this is something really, really important to do. Decide how you want this to be sent to your people, right? Because that will change a little bit, inside of HubSpot. It's not mission critical. A lot of people do email, which is totally fine. I'm just going to keep it easy and do email.
What's your favorite? Or does it completely depend on the client?
It depends on the client and the use case. So like in my example that I'm going to outline, this is something that I want to automate based off of a ticket status and a pipeline, right? And so I don't want it to be to anyone. I want it to be to the contact on the ticket that has moved from, an open status to a closed status in a ticket pipeline, for example. If you want to do that, that would be email. But then if you're looking for something like customer effort score, like chat actually might be a good way to do it if you're using the HubSpot chat on your website, because then the chat can bring up that score right in the moment, and you can, get that information when you need it. The web page is obviously something that you'd want to do for customers that are on your website regularly. An e-commerce, for example, might be a good, example of somebody that might use that option. But lots of different delivery methods. But the most common, I think, is email.
Yep.
So you'll just hit create. And in here, you can actually see a lot of different options, right? You can customize the survey language. I'm not going to go into all of the details. You can change the message. You can upload a new image, change, your colors, things like that.
How long do you think that little bit of copy there? So if you're sending this by email, how long should that little copy be? With this survey that we're looking at here, it's very short. Does that generally perform best? Do you just want something very short and snappy and get straight into the survey, or do you want a little bit more explanation?
Yeah. Yep. I always suggest, like, first of all, especially if it's something new to your clients, let them know that you're going to start doing this so that they don't think it's spam.
Mm.
You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep.
Do that. Let them know. And then keep it short and sweet, right? Because we're all busy. We don't want to read a novel. A lot of us don't have time to read a novel. So, quickly in as little copy as possible, explain why you want their opinion, and then make it easy. Like you can see this CSAT is happy, neutral, and sad, right? And a lot of people understand that. So it's easy to explain. It's easy to figure out what they need. And the user doesn't have to do a lot of reading on what they want to do. The issue with custom surveys is you could draft a question, you know what I mean, that's confusing. And then you're going to get form abandonment and you're not going to get, the feedback that you want. So make it as clear as possible, direct, keep it short. That's a great question, Tom.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The other thing is you can actually add further explanation, make this optional, right? And then you can get more information based off of their score. So a lot of people won't do this, right? So don't expect it to happen. It's probably not going to happen. Just be thrilled with the fact that they gave you something to begin with. Build that trust with them that you're going to make it right, and then ask them for more information farther down the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess one plain devil's advocate here. A listener might be thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to send out one of these surveys, I want specific feedback so I know how to actually implement that. Why would we only make this bit optional rather than something they must do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I would suggest in that scenario is have someone actually reach out to them, because then they've got that personal experience. They know that their opinion was heard and read and that you care.
That's great.
I'm just saying it because a lot of people, if it is required and they don't have time, they won't do it. But some people will, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, but with something like this, in my experience, people are generally more tend to fill these out more because they're short, right? If it's a customer survey where it says page 1 of 4 and you see the progress bar and it only moved 2%, you're like, all right, I don't have time for this.
And I think the only surveys I've ever really filled out is if I'm going to be entered in some draw for something.
Right, you get a gift card.
Yeah, exactly. You get a gift card if you win. Never ever won. But apart from that, I'm not going to take my time to write out a massive thing. My girlfriend does on Amazon, but I think that's because she does it through Alexa. And if you're listening to this, you're probably not a key Amazon worker who's going to use this technology on Amazon. You're going to have to keep it written. I love that idea of actually reaching out to people, because if you can just make it simple, like you said, just get people to click one of the faces. If you can get, say, 300 people filling out this as opposed to 10 people if you made them write something. Let's say you had, my bad maths is going to come into effect here, but if you had, say, 270 out of 300 people click yes, then you can literally say 90% of our customers out of 300 people were happy with this. And just having that higher number, then it's going to give you great figures and stats to use in your marketing. Because if you just say 90% of customers are happy, then it's like, well, did 5 people do this? Did 10 people? Did 1,000? Whatever. But by saying 300, it's like, okay, cool. That's a lot of people. And if 90% of those are happy, then this is probably a very good product or service or whatever it is. So, yeah. Sorry for that interruption. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Fine. Yeah. In HubSpot, you can customize the messages. I also recommend customizing the thank you message to make it, tailored to the sentiment. And then also set the expectation. Like this one right now, it says, we're sorry we let you down. And by the way, this is all default in HubSpot. So if you wanted to use this right now and just push play, you could. But do you see this? We'll be in touch soon.
Isn't it? It's so easy.
Yeah. You see this, we'll be in touch soon to make it right. That's the key.
Yep.
You set the expectation and then you actually follow up, because there's nothing worse than getting something like this, thinking, oh, they heard me, they value my opinion, I have a chance to explain myself, why I'm unhappy, and then they're going to make it right, and then nothing happens. Like that's really disappointing.
And how soon should you be in touch?
I wouldn't do it you know what? I don't even know if there's an industry best practice, Personally, I don't like it if it's immediate. Like if it's as soon as a response comes, there's a workflow that literally sends an email right away. That's a little creepy. But I would definitely, I would definitely wait a little bit. You know what I mean? To make it feel like you read it, even though this is something simple, like you just see a smiley face or a sad face or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would delay it for a little bit, but still do it hopefully that day. You know what I mean? Something like that. Do it, quickly. But what I love about HubSpot surveys right here, do you see this, who you're sending it to? You can actually create criteria. So in this example, I'll just put ticket properties, where pipeline is any of support pipeline, right? You apply the filter and then you can say, and ticket status is any of closed. You know what I mean? Let's look and there we go. Demo data is fun, right? And so what will happen is if people haven't been, one, enrolled in this pipeline with a ticket, and two, their ticket status isn't closed, they won't get the survey. And then on this options tab, you can have it so that it retroactively, or not retroactively, excuse me, it includes existing contacts. So anybody who is in the pipeline currently in closed, you can actually have it send out now, or you can, remove that type of thing. So, definitely check this out. It's just like triggers on a workflow or filters on an active list. So the last tab in here is automation. And this is one of my number one recommendations to my clients inside of HubSpot whenever possible. Like the temptation is to have a notification go to a person. And while that's not inherently wrong, it just makes a lot of cleanup for you if that person decides to leave your company or they switch roles, right? So whenever possible, I always coach my clients to go with a team, because then you can add or remove people to a team, and then HubSpot automatically updates it everywhere in your portal because you've used a team instead of a person. And I speak from personal experience on this. At my previous job, we actually used HubSpot and someone left our marketing team, right? Well, we couldn't figure out why we weren't getting form notifications. And come to find out, this person had set the form notifications to only go to their personal email, which is why we weren't getting leads. We weren't getting notification of leads, right? Because of the actual setup. So
that's a business killer, isn't it, as well? That's like, it's one of those, it sounds quite funny, but that is actually,
it's not.
It kills businesses, yeah.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time to figure that out, but you know how like you have those wait a second, and then you go in and you look at all these forms, these things that you used to get information from, and all of a sudden you're not, and you're like, what's the common denominator? And you figure it out, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then we went in and we fixed it. But my point is, if you listen to what I'm saying now, just do the team route, you won't have that problem.
Sorted right there.
Yeah. But the other thing I love doing is creating workflows based on sentiment. So you could, a common use case is to send an internal email, right, to management, for example, that you got an unhappy, and I would also put in a neutral response, because your neutrals are on the fence. They're going to go one way or the other, right? And by giving them some extra face time, some extra time, literally, with you, hopefully we'll sway them over to the happy and not the unhappy, right? And the same with the NPS score. You want them to go from a detractor, I can't remember the middle stage, into a promoter, right? So the neutrals are probably the most critical to address, in my opinion, only because they could sway an unhappy way.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well, because with surveys, most people are taught just to focus on the really happy, to keep them happy, or the really unhappy people, predominantly the unhappy people. A lot of people do ignore the neutrals completely. And you've made such a good point there, because actually those neutrals, if you just ignore them now, they might not even become really unhappy, but they're probably not going to become like lifetime customers or clients, or certainly not necessarily lifetime, but long-term clients or customers of yours. So if you can make them happy, then instantly, like, you've just improved your ARR significantly, potentially. So that is a great point. That.
Yeah. But, right here, it's the same workflow tools that you're used to. There's also this fun generate actions with AI, which is kind of fun too. But anyway, you can set up simple workflows in here to do the work for you, to create the follow-up, to send the internal notification, to send the external notification, things like that right inside of HubSpot. And then I'm not going to save this since it was a bogus review anyway. But you can go into the survey after it's sent and look for responses, right? And then you can analyze those responses. You can see this one obviously doesn't have data because it's a test portal, but you can see that this is where you would come to see that. You would actually get a list of contacts and things like that so that you can actually drill down into it. And another thing to point out is, like, let's say, like, you want people to give you information on why they're unhappy, neutral, and even happy, right? Like, why were you so happy with what we just did? But a lot of people won't do it, right? We all know that.
Yep.
But what you could do is go to their contact record, use the summarize with AI, right? Feature like inside of HubSpot to generate a summary for you. And then hopefully you'll get some indicator of why they are. Like, also common sense would tell you, if I sign into HubSpot, Tom just submitted an unhappy survey, but didn't give me any reason why. But then I go and there's 500 unresolved customer service tickets. It's pretty obvious why Tom's unhappy, you know? And that's why I love using the survey tool coupled with that powerful contact record in HubSpot CRM, because you can actually make intelligent decisions without having to really do a whole lot because it's all on the contact record. And so, yeah, that's what I like about it.
And that summarized with AI tool is really powerful. We actually created a podcast several weeks ago now, and it was about like little known use cases of AI. And that's one we didn't actually talk about, but that right there is going to save you so much time, isn't it? And instantly get like a bird's eye view of how your customers are feeling, essentially, and what actions they've taken. So, Elizabeth, I think this was a fantastic episode. It was good getting deeper into the weeds today. Like, obviously, past episodes, we've probably taken things at a higher level, whereas today we really got very granular, and that was fascinating. So again, I would love to have you back on soon. I'm sure that listeners and watchers will too. If you're watching this, let us know. Put a comment in on YouTube if you have used the survey tool yourself, and if not, let us know if you're going to and what you are specifically going to do. We'd love to hear, we'd essentially love to hear that you're actually benefiting from this podcast and really taking a lot of value away, because Elizabeth has shared, not just today, but in previous weeks as well, some really cool tricks and tips and some HubSpot secrets. I mean, I'm sounding a bit like one of those online gurus, aren't I here?
Well, but I would be a Jedi, you know.
You would.
Yeah, I feel like I would.
HubSpot Jedi. I think that should be your nickname right there. And on that note, we are going to end a fantastic episode. So, Elizabeth, thanks again, and thank you for watching and listening.